Hey, I'm here with Brian Cook. He's in the winner's bracket as well, but instead we're going to do commentary on Michael Bonde versus Bob Huang.
It's going to be great.
It is going to be great. We have a special treat in for you from Michael's side. The deck he's playing, I don't think many people would have expected him to be playing it.
And what is that, Jarvis?
It is Elves combo.
What do you mean by that?
Often, Michael is associated with his with the opposite deck of Elves combo, which is Death and Taxes.
So he switched to the enemy.
Yeah, actually, before the Pro Tour, I remember seeing a screenshot of Lampalot just playing on his main account, just playing Elves combo for everyone to know before the Pro Tour.
I do know that my friend Itai hates playing against Elves, so it appears that Michael doesn't have the same venomous feelings.
So, just to go over it, some people might not have seen this deck before, but it's generally a Glimpse of Nature combo deck. The original version was as well from Pro Tour Berlin, but this version, no natural orders, just glimpses.
I believe Julian calls this Chaos Elves.
Yeah, there's no natural orders, so there's just chaos, right?
So how do you feel about some of these one-ups, Jarvis? Runs run Packmaster, Azuri, Scavenging Ooze feels, it's like fairly stock,
Yeah.
but then the main deck Rex Sage. Tell me your thoughts on these, because I know that you used to play Elves years ago.
All right, so I think the Packmaster is really good versus specifically Grixis style decks, because it's actually fairly hard for them to remove. It's a 4-mana 5/5 that has Champion and Elf. When it comes in and play Champion and Elf, it has the ability to in a green put a 2/2 wolf into play, and all your wolves have Death Touch. So basically, it's an army in a can by itself, so you can sort of mid-range them out. I think he's probably playing that card because it's so good versus Grixis variants.
So there's a card that I'm sad to not see, and I discussed this last time I was streaming, but the elf that makes everyone lose a life for one, or for a black, a green, and then one colorless.
Talking about Shaman of the Pack.
Yes.
It is from Magic Origins. I think that card is really powerful if you're expecting specifically Glacial Chasm.
It's a card I fear out of TES, to be honest. And I think some people underrate the ability to drain life, personally.
Yeah, it is good in combination with Symbiote. Maybe you can set up a board where you just like nug them for 4 or 5 every turn. You know, like Shrapnel Blast style. So
do you think that Elves post-ban could ever go back to not splashing black, or is the discard too important?
I think discard's too important.
But it looks like we have Jarvis's deck list now, or Jarvis Bob's deck list now. Sorry about that.
God, did you do that? Did you?
Sorry, Jarvis.
The same person. Really? Okay. All
Bob Huang, we have his deck list. So looking over his sideboard really quick, there's a few key hitters I want to discuss. First, Price of Progress. I think Bob's metagaming a little bit, and he knows that both you and Jody are on land, so I personally like that call a lot. Next card, Null Rod. It's probably for me, but screw Bob. And then I really like the 2 sideboard of Braids.
Yep. Bob and I both played something close to this in the MTG First. One of our sponsors went in Ancestral Recall last weekend. I actually suggested to, well, it appears we're going to the match, but
it looks like I'm frozen.
One of the key cards I think in this matchup is going to be Bob's 2 main deck Grim Bobomancers. Having repeatable removal versus a deck that's all X2s or less, except for the Packmaster, is just fantastic.
So Twitch chat is commenting on how Bob has 3 Blazing Volley. That's for me. But Bob's not going to get to use them. Stay tuned.
Blazing Volley also obviously fantastic in this matchup.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Personally, I've experienced that effects like Golgari Charm aren't always effective against Elves as people think they are. I know that you've played a lot in that seat. Do you find it to be a huge blowout, or are you kind of just like more of this is an annoyance?
Well, First off, Mike, the things are slightly switched, if you notice that. Basically, oh, he's fixing it, I guess, real quick. But basically, the Elves hand is on the wrong side. He's going to switch that real quick. But yes, cards like Golgari Charm are sort of annoying, but you do have a lot of two toughness creatures in your deck that you can sort of get around it. But the thing is, obviously, Bob doesn't have access to green in his deck anymore with the banning of Deathrite Shaman, so he has to turn to a card like Electrickery or Blazing Volley, or similarly, is it Staticaster?
I know that Bob used to be very high on Is It Staticaster during the Deathrite Shaman days. It's probably not in there anymore because of the 3 mana. It's probably kind of tough without Deathrite Shaman.
Well, you should know that he still has Lilion the Last Hope, but I think that card is just barely good enough to play despite not having Deathrite Shaman.
Sure, but correct me if I'm wrong, but that's generally for slower matchups where you're more likely to make more land drops. Like, you're not looking to cast that on turn 3, are you?
Versus a deck like Elves, I probably am.
Okay.
Like, I just want to moat. So, I think the way you should play Delver versus Elves is to try to kill as much of their stuff as possible. No matter whatever route you can take to kill their stuff, just do it.
So, Chigora's in chat says he thought Bonde was going to play Shadow. Do you think that we have anyone playing Shadow in the winner's bracket?
Do we have a Luis Scott Vargas in our league?
I don't believe so. Maybe next year on Legacy Premier League.
I really would doubt it. I think the Shadow deck is unnecessarily hard to play for not that much gain.
So something I've heard through chat groups is that the Shadow deck has caused the uptick in Reanimator to settle down a little bit, which I personally like, because I can't beat that deck.
Oh, yeah.
But how do you as a lands player feel about the sway of Reanimator and Grixis Death Shadow right now? Or even just Blue-Black Shadow?
I would much rather play against Blue-Black Shadow than Reanimator.
Okay. Do you find that Maze of Ith isn't enough, or effects like Tabernacle just aren't effective enough in the matchup in general?
Versus Reanimator or versus Shadow or Reanimator?
Reanimator. My apologies.
Versus Reanimator, it's not good enough because most of the competent Reanimator players will make a Gristlebrand, then make a Tidespout Tyrant.
Okay.
So literally, I actually played Reanimator in the Pro Tour. One of the reasons was that it is the combo deck that shreds other combo decks.
I would agree with that.
And also, I just treated it as a Gristlebrand deck. You really just want to put Gristlebrand in play every single match, unless your Silver Bullet actually kills them.
And I think that's something that the current trophy leader, Eric Landon, has popularized. You just don't want to be playing cards like Sire of Insanity because they allow your opponent outs to get back into the game, where with Gristlebrand, you just bury everyone.
Yeah, and also Gristlebrand allows you to make the so-called Silver Bullet creature next, and also it just gives you a ton of disruption. The deck has 4 unmasks. Those are basically the equivalent of Force of Will in that deck.
I would agree with that. Then pair with Cabal Therapy, you have a very nasty combo.
Yep. All right, so it looks like we are going to be back in 1 second.
With Legacy Premier League.
Yeah. In the old days, I used to think Elves was fairly favored in this matchup, but I don't know. It's hard to tell nowadays.
I know who I'm rooting for. Who are you rooting for, Jarvis?
I'm going to root for Lamphalot.
So am I. Screw Bob.
Poor Bob. I mean, to be fair, I think Michael is an extremely strong player. That's why I picked him to root for.
So you think Bob is very bad at Magic?
I didn't say that. I literally did not say that.
Sure you didn't, Jarvis. It's okay.
All right, so
well, at least we have one person rooting for Bob, and it is Tannen Grace. Good guy, Tannen. I've never heard a bad thing about him in my life.
Oh, Tannen's a fantastic human. All right, so Bob is a second Delver, and
It's looking pretty grim for the Elves side.
Yeah. So the fear is actually Delver's one of the few ways they can aggro out the Elves player fast enough because the gum gets ground up real quick. Quirion Ranger, Wirewood, Symbiote make it impossible to force damage through.
So if you're Bob, do you brainstorm in the upkeep to guarantee that your Delver flips?
I wouldn't, because I want to shuffle away that True Name.
Ooh, he hit the red source. It's a very good draw.
That's fantastic. I think I would lead with Brainstorm and figure out what to do from there.
So generally, I'm someone that believes that like 95% of the time it's wrong to brainstorm with the Delver trigger on the stack. That was a situation in which I might have considered it, just because I want the tempo swing of having 2 flip Delvers. I know that you said that you wouldn't have done it, but if I was in the Bob's shoes, I probably would have done it there.
Yeah, the issue with that is you probably are not going to deploy this True Name in a timely fashion. So that's probably why I wouldn't have done it. But in any case, the awkward part of Michael's draw is his Quirion Ranger, which is normally a fantastic card, but he has no forests besides Dryad Arbor to untap his Dryad Arbor.
That is very awkward.
Yeah, we actually needed that Bayou to stick, and Bob gets
a second Biting Bolt.
That's probably going to seal the game up, because it's 6 damage plus 6 damage plus bolt opponent's face, or he could just bolt the creature.
Yeah, it doesn't. It takes 1 turn off the clock, assuming that Michael doesn't play a fetch land.
Yeah, I would have probably leaned towards just saving the bolt for his face to ensure lethal, but I think it's probably not going to matter.
Do you think it's a more risky line to go to the face, or like,
no,
is it more conservative to kill the creature?
I think it's actually much safer to save it for the face.
Okay. So we'll see a Thoughtseize here from Bob. Unfortunately, it's not really going to hit much. Like, Glimpse of Nature doesn't do anything with only 1 mana, and none of the Elves do anything.
Yeah. The problem is Michael's hand is so bad that it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it looks like that'll probably lock the game up. Plus, it's not like Michael can really play more than 1 threatening spell this turn, and Bob knows that after having seen his hand, so he can just snap off a force on whatever he feels the most dangerous card is.
Luckily for Michael, it appears that the life totals have switched. Yeah, but we're going to see a concession anyway. So Michael gained 16 life at the last minute, but decided to concede like a noble person.
Oh, did Mirror Universe get activated?
I believe so. So it looks like Liliana of the Last Hope immediately came in from Bob's sideboard.
Yeah. Colgan's Command also okay. And also, like, Colgan's Command could randomly kill, like, a GT or a weird fringe card that you might not expect.
So there's 2 interesting things that I'm seeing from Bob here, and the first one is that he is not signing out True Names. To me, like you said, you're never going to cast it. Is it because they pitched a force?
So I would say that it's generally slow to cast them, but being able to get through a gummed up board is valuable, and I think Gurmag Angler is much worse.
Okay. And then there's a couple other interesting things. So I know that Spell Pierce gets laughed at from the Elves community as a way of answering Glimpse of Nature, Natural Order. We saw Bob immediately board out Spell Pierce in days. Is that something that's pretty common, or is it something that Bob does based on feel?
I think, well, first off, it's a matter of how you want to approach the matchup, right? I think Bob feels that Spell Pierce is not going to be live often enough, so he sides it out. And also, Daze is a little bit worse on the draw.
Okay. I have heard that in the past.
That's my guess. Ooh, on Michael's side, 3 Meekstone and 3 Choke? That is an enormous number of cards to have.
Meekstone is very techy. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. But back to the Colton's Command comment I made, Command actually lines up very well versus Meekstone. You get to pick off the Meekstone and a creature.
So I am a little disappointed in Michael based on his selection of Choke. I really wish we had some white border chokes to go with his Meekstone.
Oh, you want the white bordered, like, 7th edition?
I believe they were in 8th, correct?
Oh, they're in 8th. They're in 8th, yes. You're correct. Because That's why they're modern legal. They're in 8th edition.
That standard was fairly miserable. I don't know if you remember it, but like Mono Blue Vidalcan Shackles with O-Stone is very popular.
Temporal Adept?
Yes. And I remember being end-step boiled quite a few times, and then untap and then boiled again.
You're like, screw this. The one thing you should note is Bob boarded out a land, but it's his basic island. His mana base isn't really under attack except by a choke, and basic island doesn't really help there whatsoever, you know?
Do you think he's expecting chokes?
I think only like 1/3 of the Elves lists actually have that card, so I wouldn't expect the card, personally.
Okay. So I think Bob's hand is super interesting. I'm expecting him to play a turn 1 Ponder, looking for a red source here. I think it's like almost, it's not a mulligan, but like it's definitely questionable, because if he misses here, he might just be out of the game. And it looks like he missed.
Did he miss?
He shuffled.
A Blazing Volley is not... Well, we still have a Brainstorm lined up for turn 2. So I think it's okay. And you can buy a little bit of time if you really need to force a will, like a key spell, pitching Brainstorm. Obviously, we'd prefer not to do that, because I think you need the Brainstorm to dig for a red source, but...
And luckily for Bob, he doesn't need to force a will the symbiote, because he has the Blazing Volley for when he eventually finds the red source.
Yeah. On Michael's side, I think this Abrupt Decay is not the easiest to cast, unfortunately.
It's a little awkward.
Note the Cavern Souls. That's usually a flex slot in Elves, but if it were just a fetch land right there to get by you, he might be slightly better off.
I believe that.
It is nice that it does basically let you get all of your creatures, most of your creatures, through Dazes, Forces,
So we saw that Bob only has 2 copies of a Braid, and that he just happened to draw both of them. It's not exactly what he wanted. I think it's really there as a one-of, and with a hand like this, it's going to be pretty clunky, so I would actually expect Bob to Brainstorm away one of the Abrades. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or not.
Well, it's hard to say what you would put back, because you need to see what the Brainstorm draws you into, right?
I'd agree with that, but assuming that it's like a fetch land and a threat?
I'd probably put one of them back, yeah. And also note the Lavamancer will eat up a lot of his red mana too, so... in chat, Michael was like, what did you expect me to play? Bob says Death and Taxes or Elves. So props to Bob at least building his deck with those decks in mind. Like if you look at Bob's deck, clearly the sideboarded games should be extremely good for him in both of those matchups, right?
Yeah, I would have only put Michael on Death and Taxes. I would have never guessed Elves, but I'm not someone that just randomly watches Twitch streams personally.
That's fair.
Maybe that's why I'm not very good at Magic.
I don't think Michael actually streamed the deck. I think he was just playing it in queues.
Okay. So it looks like we're returning the Visionary here and untapping the Finhorn.
The best card draw engine in Legacy, as I put it once.
You were very young then, Jarvis. Very, very young.
Nightmare scenario for Bob. Brainstorm, no fetch land.
Are we going to see a concession?
No, you're not dead yet. You do have another Brainstorm for next turn. It's going to be pretty awkward. I do wonder if you're supposed to waste the Cavern. I think
I would.
You're supposed to, and just force a will the Visionary on the way down.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, in fact, you see Bob do that. I think the problem is letting him draw all of the cards with Visionary, you'll just get killed even faster.
So something you hear from high-level players is when you're in a losing position like this, you ask yourself, what does a winning game look like from here on out? Jarvis, will you describe what a winning game looks like from Bob's side?
Force of Willing the Visionary, brainstorming into a red source, and casting probably Blazing Volley.
Okay.
Which awkwardly only kills one creature on this board.
Yeah, that's part of the power of Symbiote.
Yep.
But we are seeing a Heritage Druid come down here, so if I was in Bob's shoes, I would not force a will this just because of the Blazing Valley.
Exactly. I think the other thing Bob realizes is the winning position looks like letting Michael extend into the Blazing Volley and then drawing a red source next turn.
So assuming that Bob does everything that he needs to do, Michael doesn't actually have a whole lot left going on in his hand.
Right. This Abrupt Decay is pretty anemic. He'll be able to cast it off Birchmore Rangers if he really wants to. The question is, would you play the Birchmore Rangers?
It's a tough call.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably would, but I'm not the best Elves player. I think that I would be trying to apply more pressure while my opponent's constrained on resources.
Yeah, so there's a few factors replaying the Birchlore. If you play the Birchlore, a glimpse you draw next turn is dead. And the other thing to worry about is if Bob has a sweeper of some sort. All right. Oh, wow.
Oh, no red source.
That's really bad for Bob. To be fair, let's count the damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 per turn. So that's a 3-turn clock. So Bob will be able to dig out of this with a Ponder next turn to shuffle, at least.
And it looks like he's still hiding the Blazing Valley on top.
Yeah, I like that because if you get discard spelled, you obviously don't want it in your hand.
So if you're Mike, do you play this Birchlore as a morph?
Well, hard to do that now unless if you activate the Wirewood Symbiote first, which you might. And I actually probably would. Bob's at 10. I mean, like, 2-2 for 3 is probably going to be relatively good here. Oh, nice. Oh, maybe... Okay.
I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I thought he was indirectly playing around the Blazing Volley, but still no. All right, Ponder. Look for a fetch. Nope, shuffle. It looks like a snap.
Is it there?
Oh, no.
The worst draw.
And the Scavengers will probably lock up the game even through the Blazing Volley. Because you'll just be able to make such a big creature.
So it looks like Michael Bonde is going to be our victor in Game 2. So it looks like there's going to be a Game 3 with, fortunately, neither opponent coming close to timing out.
No, these games have been really fast, despite the technical difficulties that Mike had. But it just looks like...
You don't say that about Mike. He is perfect, and everything he does is perfect.
The time his computer exploded wasn't perfect. That's not his fault. That's entropy taking it out on the universe.
So do you think we're going to see any changes in board strategy based on play draw for Game 3?
I would like to see Bob to put Daze back in the deck, and in fact he does. Interesting that you would shave 2 forces, but I think Bob sort of realizes that Michael doesn't have Natural Order in the deck.
So maybe I'm just not great with Delver variants, but I was thinking, like, why is he keeping true names when those could be Gurmag Anglers, they don't cost as much? And then it dawned on me that true name's unblockable. And I think that's probably a huge reason of why they're still in the deck.
That is part of it. And Gurmag Angler just gets blocked by an elf, and, Quarian Ranger or Symbiote returns whatever is doing the blocking.
So I don't think I like the discard spells from Bob's side. I would rather have the forces personally.
I was actually thinking that somewhat. I think you want them to spend mana and let you leverage A, your sweepers slightly better, and B, just let them just daze or force whatever they cast.
So I kind of like Bob's hand, assuming that he draws another mana source.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, it could be fairly grim. I think that Mike's hand is a little bit clunky with all those lands.
Yeah, the problem is the Cradles are not great right now either. I would actually lead with...
Green Sun?
Not play anything this turn, I think.
Okay. So you wouldn't have risked jamming the Green Sun into Daze?
Nah. The real question I was thinking about is, do you play Meekstone that turn? I think the answer is also no, because you want the creatures to be tapped before you Meekstone.
Because then you can just never flip it, correct?
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Meekstone is power 3, yeah, I can see it now. So, the young Pyromancers won't actually get caught underneath the Meekstone.
Yep. They are not... They are meek enough, in fact, actually.
I remember my first time seeing Meekstone in Legacy. It was shortly after Emrakul had come out. People were talking about how it's acceptable to take one hit and then cast Meekstone.
Why those people thought the games would play out that way.
Yeah.
Fortunately for Bob, if he finds a fetch, which he does, well, I mean, a Volk is probably good enough.
Yeah.
You can deploy the Pyromancer and abrade the Meekstone later.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's all 4 young Pyromancers.
Yeah, it had that look about it. They actually do not really get better in multiples in this matchup. I think you want the first one. The rest of them are kind of whatever.
Yeah. He's also stuck on 1 red source, so if he's casting multiple young Pyromancers, he's not casting a Lightning Bolt or a Braid.
Right. I actually predict next turn that, well, I won't get too hasty, but we'll probably see Thoughtseize be cast next turn because you get to use your Underground Sea that way.
So I'm willing to bet that... Sorry for interrupting you. I'm willing to bet that Bob didn't see himself casting a Braid on Meekstone in this matchup.
Nope, but... One colorless, gain 3 life. Yes. Michael has cast a colorless healing salve.
It's pretty good. If you play a lot of Standard, Navigator's Compass.
Yeah, also if you play a lot of Standard, Healing's Grace is legal, which could technically prevent 6 damage. You gain 3 and it's healing salve, but it costs white mana, so it's much worse.
I think we're... Okay, so it is becoming the card you just mentioned because it doesn't look like the Delver's untapping again, so that's 6 life.
That is 6 life.
Is there a 1 mana 9 life that exists in Magic?
Yep. 1 mana, gain 9. Heroes Reunion is close though, but that's 2 mana.
Wilson is wondering why Michael fetched up Dryad Arbor there in the face of...
a little bit weird too. Well, how many basics? No, Michael has 3 basics, so that is a little bit interesting. I guess, sorry, the upside to fetching, and if you don't get wasted, is your cradles are much better, is probably the answer.
Okay. So are we looking for a resolved Green Sun for 9?
Yeah, probably. I mean, or we could mid-range this game, you know, like Zenith for Scavenging News or something somewhere. Ooh, a second Meekstone.
Ooh!
I like seeing that because now you don't even want to abrade the Meekstone. You're just going to have to win with both of those in play.
This has been a very entertaining match.
Yeah, I mean, now Bob's hand is 4 2-1s for 2, a Thoughtseize and an Abrade. Oh, look at this glimpse. We might see some fireworks here.
It's the value glimpse.
It
Does it matter which elf you play first?
Not really.
Okay.
So we can play a second Cradle, which I predict is going to happen. Because you know Bob doesn't have a Wasteland hand, otherwise he would have just played it.
Choke! Right? Oh my god. Is he going to slam it into a Daze?
Well, he can't even cast it right now, right? Oh, he can cast it off getting an elf.
Yeah.
Having all 3 elves playing Choke. That's probably really good and close to lights out.
That's what I want to see here.
Yeah, that Choke probably going to end it.
Get Bob down in the loser's bracket where he belongs. Boom.
Boom. You know, it's not a pleasant feeling being choked when your mana base is mostly islands.
It doesn't happen to me too often.
I mean, It is desperate times when people side in choke versus you. Lance is desperate enough to do that.
I've had it happen in a Grand Prix. My opponent was playing Zoo.
It's probably correct for them to do it, right?
Yeah.
Just try to get lucky because the matchup sucks.
So, is there a winning view for Bob this game? Or is he just out?
I think he's out because the problem is we can't remove the choke, and basically all the ways of winning the game involve spending a lot of mana. And I think that Scavenging Ooze is just going to lock it up. It's just going to be such a quick clock on Bob. The real question is, do you attack with your Heritage? Probably not. Or probably so. No, that was the fake out. Click on click. Click on click.
I think I would have done it.
Keep in mind you have the benefit of seeing hands. You really don't want to trade a Heritage Druid for an Elemental token, I think.
Okay. That's a good point. I guess from Michael's side, you don't know that Bob can't just cast a spell and make a 1/1.
Correct. And I think if you just keep a solid board, A, your Cradle is better, and B, how is Bob going to beat the Scavenging Ooze?
So Caleb Smith says that Bob's way of winning this game is Deathrite Shaman. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jarvis?
If Bob drew Deathrite Shaman right here, I would immediately ban him.
I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, because he would have clearly hacked the system.
I also love Bob's logo, by the way, for the Wendy's. I worked at Wendy's for 3 years in high school, so seeing Bob squinting is perfect.
We've evolved.
Oh, it's also a battle of the fast food chains with Michael Bonds up top. Perfect.
Yeah, I kind of prefer Wendy's to McDonald's.
Hands down.
Ooh, Sylvan Library. Honestly, it doesn't really matter what Michael does now, and I think he realizes that. One problem is that Scavenging Ooze is not going to untap that easily.
Would you consider not pumping it? I mean, it's a little too late now, but would you have considered not making it any larger?
No, I wouldn't have, because of the fact that if you don't, then it just trades with Pyromancer, and that's not really a great exchange for you, I think.
It's tough because, I think that might have been an acceptable thing rather than it just being a tapped card that can gain a life.
So here's the thing: if you see a Quirion Ranger or a Symbiote in your top 3 cards, you can just untap and attack with it anyways.
Okay, you have me there. You are many wise.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really doesn't matter what happens here because Bob has a hand of spells he can't really deploy, and he's just sort of waiting to die, I think, is what's going on here.
Okay, so if you look at the 2 deck lists before this match had started, do you still think that Michael would have won? I know we were both rooting for him, but based on 75 versus 75, I would have guessed that Bob was favored.
I would have guessed Bob was slightly favored. Maybe even heavily favored with that many Blazing Volleys. But
Blazing Volley does not save you from the Nettle Sentinel.
Or Meekstone. Or Choke. The common theme here that was pointed out earlier in the last match is the enchantments are really hard for Grixis to deal with.
Yeah, that was a very good observation by the Dean.
Yeah. Whereas Meekstone, they can kill, but 2 Meekstones, the problem is you don't really want to kill the first one unless you can get rid of the second one, right? And so you saw Bob not kill either.
I love that that they are keeping track of how much life Meekstone has gained. It's almost like an Aetherflux Reservoir.
Well, the difference with Aetherflux Reservoir is you can pay 50 life to deal your opponent 50.
Well, that's why you have Nettle Sentinels, right?
Yeah, be careful not to do that when you're exactly at 50.
So I've heard.
I don't know if you actually came across that last weekend.
I did not. I actually only got to use Reservoir twice. I think it's probably the worst card in Standard Storm.
It is, but it's necessary to beat Fog, I think, in Game 1.
Yeah. But we're here playing Legacy, and we are watching Bob Huang get the crap kicked out of him by Michael Bond.
Yeah, this has not been a pretty game.
I mean, I've enjoyed it. I think that's all that matters.
Ooh, Wilson says the Mets untap under Meekstone because their power is low. How do you feel about that?
Their power is very low. For those of you that are unaware, I have a $50 bet that Wilson and I had started at the beginning of the baseball season, where if the Mets had a better record, in which at the time they were the best team in baseball, I would win $50, and if I lost, I would pay him $50 if the Braves had a better record. It is guaranteed that I am paying Wilson $50 right now.
Wow. Michael's sort of showboating here. I think Zenithing for the fluff is sort of overkill. I guess it's the safest play.
I mean, just end Bob's misery, right?
Is Bob going to braid his own creature? Just as a show of defiance?
Looks like we're destroying Meekstone.
No. Oh. All right. We have Michael Bonde victory, 2-1.
I think we should thank our sponsors. So we have Card Hoarder, Cardboard.live, The Epic Storm, and MTG First.
Yeah. They're giving out fairly generous prizes, and obviously Card Hoarder helps people play the decks if they don't have the cards on the stream. I do believe Bob owns his deck. I do believe that. But for other people. Oh, you're skeptical?
Yeah, I just don't think that Bob's collection is that large online.
I think he owns the deck.
Okay. Well, I personally love Card Hoarder. I go there for all of my decks now at this point. I bought 2 standard decks last weekend while testing for GP Orlando. I know it's not Legacy, but they're very cheap. They make everything very easy. I highly recommend.
Yep. If you need any Magic Online cards, go visit them.